Hi, this is Kamera again. We're on day number 274, Malachi chapters 1 through 4. Guys, this is the last book of the Old Testament. This is October 1st. So it took us a full 9 months to complete the Old Testament. So far, we've covered 38 books. Here they are: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah. This is where it gets tricky. Esther, Job, Esther and Job. And then there's, this is where I get stuck at, right? And then there's Psalms, and then there's Proverbs, then there's Ecclesiastic, then there's Songs of Solomon. Then there's Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations. There's Ezekiel, then there's Daniel. Then after Daniel, there's Hosea, there's Joel, there's Amos. And then after that, I kind of like get kind of stuck. There's Obadiah, there's Jonah, there's Micah, and then there's Nahum. After Nahum, they have a Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and then we have today Malachi. I think I covered them all. This is the 39th book. We covered all those books, guys. So, yeah, Malachi, last book of the Old Testament. And we have 3 more months to go: October, November, December. And those are the 3 months that's going to cover all of the New Testament. Exciting! So God gives these messages to Malachi. God says, I have always loved you. They have the nerve to ask, how have you loved us? So God goes through a list of things and tells them how he showed his love to them. Then God says, you have shown contempt to me. They're like, okay, so how have we shown contempt to you, Lord? So God tells them how they've shown contempt. For instance, how they disrespected him and how they dishonor him, offering defiled offerings to him, sacrifice to him. For instance, when God first told them about the type of offerings he told them to give, he says unclean, blemish-free animals. They start giving God crippled animals, sickly animals. We'll give God what we don't want. God said, y'all wouldn't even give this to y'all own governor, but y'all give these to me. And so we don't sacrifice animals to God now, but we need to check ourselves. What type of offerings are we giving God? We're giving God our service when we serve him and do things for him. We give God our prayer time, our offering of praise to him. But what spirit are we in when we're giving him those things? The way we live our life is an offering unto God. How are we living our lives to God? Are we sinning and giving God only so much of it and say, I'm going to go to church, I'm going to read your word, but I'm still going to fornicate. I'm going to commit adultery. I'm going to be mean to the cashier. I have every right to flip off that next driver. I have every right to gossip about those, talk about those people who are not living up to God's part. So, yeah, the way we serve God is an offering unto God. So, no, we don't sacrifice animals, but we serve him in our service to him. And when we give our offerings to God, what is our mentality when we get our hearts when we give it to him, grudgingly or just I give him a little bit? So yeah, that part, guys. So he says, you dishonor me and you disrespect me. How you're giving your offerings? So you wouldn't give it to your governor. And we're about to present ourselves to people we respect. We put on our best appearance. Are we giving God our best self? So we want to impress them, right? He says, you cry, praying to me and praying. He said, why should I show you favor? He says, I'm not pleased with you. I'm not pleased with you. Why should I show you favor? So God, this part right here, guys, God tells the priests to listen to him and to make up their minds to honor God, or he will bring a terrible curse on those priests. We don't have priests. We have ministers, evangelists, pastors. We have people who live to serve God. He says, make up your minds to honor God. If you're going to serve Him, you're going to serve Him correctly. We are representatives of God. He says, or if you're going to be shabby about it, I'm going to bring these curses on you. And even the blessings that you do receive from people, I'm going to curse those as well, which I've already been doing because you haven't been listening. He's cursing the blessings. Isn't that something? He's like, can you do me a favor? Can you get him, please? Thank you. And so, this word today is raw. I'm just putting it out there. Is raw. Oh my God, I love this part right here because, as you guys know, God had His tribes to go. He had blessed the children of Israel with and allocated properties to them. There was this one tribe He did not allocate properties to. Their inheritance was not the physical land. Their inheritance was God, to serve God, and God blesses them just by serving Him. And so the people have to bring their offerings to the priest. The priest would make sure that they honored God and took those offerings. They're responsible for teaching the people the right way of God's way. So this is the thing. God says the purpose of my covenant with the Levites. Those are the ones. Levites were not allocated property. That was not their inheritance. God says the purpose of my covenant with the Levites was to bring life and peace to them. He said that's what I did to them. I gave them life and peace. He said they revered me. They passed unto my people the truth of my instructions. This is what the Levites did. They passed on the truth of God's instructions to them. And so he says, when God told them something, they gave it to the people. What God blessed them, whatever God wanted them to do, they did. He said, those priests did not lie or cheat. They walked with Him, He said. And He said they lived good, righteous lives. They turned many, many people from lives of sin. That's what He said about the priests. And He says the priests, their lips should preserve knowledge, the knowledge of God. They should. The evangelists, the ministers of God, the pastors, they should preserve knowledge of God. People should be okay with going to them for instructions from God. It should be okay. They're supposed to go to, they should be able to. Seriously. We respect men and women of God enough to go to them to hear how God wants us to be, or instructions from God, guidance from God. We'll go to a man or woman of God. They should. They are messengers of the Lord. But you have left God's path. He's talking to the ones who left God's path, the priests, the man of God, the representative of God, who happen to be the pastors, the ministers, the man and woman of God. He says, you have left God's path. Your instructions have caused many to stumble into sin. And you've corrupted the covenant I made with the Levites in that case. But in this case, a lot of people have corrupted their covenant with God. And we see all the time where there are men and women of God who have corrupted people's thoughts of God. They just have. They've corrupted the instruction, the word of God. And God is not pleased with that. And so, God is not pleased with that. And there's so much in here, guys. I'm not going to cover it all. Just go through and read it. Judah has been unfaithful, done detestable things. Also, Israel and Jerusalem have done terrible, detestable things. And he points out the men marrying men who worship idols. Then they bring me idols. They're crying that God doesn't accept their offerings. He says, you cheat on your wives, okay? You've been cheating on your wife, though she's been so faithful to you. You've been cheating on her, committing adultery. Yeah. Didn't the Lord make you and your wife one, but you're cheating on her? You committing adultery. Yeah. And He says, you have wearied me, claiming all the evil you do is good. So God is not pleased, and he pointed out some of the evils that people have done. And the marrying men, I was really happy to see that he, in the Old Testament, pointed out, and a lot of people say how men cheated on their wives, but even women, they cheat on their husband. I do believe that when he pointed out a sin from one spouse, he's pointing out to the sin to the spouse. If he's saying something about the woman and how he's not happy with what the woman's done, the man did the same thing. God is not pleased with that. If the man has done something, he pointed out what the man has done wrong. If the woman does it, they're just as bad as the man. So he's not saying men cheat on your wife. I'm not happy about that, and leave off the woman. He's saying, woman too, you cheat on your spouse. I'm not happy about that either. So let's not narrow this down to, okay, he only meant this for the cheating men, not the cheating women. Okay? And vice versa. And so God says he is sending a messenger who will clean and purify and refine. He will judge sorcerers, adulterers. He's going to judge, this messenger is going to judge all wickedness. Those who cheat their employees, those who oppress the widows, the orphans, the foreigners, those who don't fear God. God says he doesn't change. And he says return to him. And then God points out that people rob him and they cheat him. And they're like, well, Lord, how do we rob and cheat you? He says by not paying your tithes and offerings. And he says, my storehouse can't even be filled because you are cheating me. You are robbing me. And that's a delicate situation where people don't like to talk about tithes and offering. That's my money. I worked hard. If God didn't give you the strength, the energy, the life, the favor for the job, or what have you, you wouldn't be doing so. He's in control of your life, your health, your strength. God's in control of that. Because if he said no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And everything here is God's. You can't take it off this earth. You cannot take it out of his sight. So when you leave, that stuff stays here. All that belongs to God. And believe it or not, the first 10% is God's. And when you spend that 10%, you're spending God's money. You're robbing him. And the offerings, he wants you to give those offerings. And he wants us to have the right spirit when we do it. And this is the thing, though. People decide they want to spend God's 10% the way they want to because they still holding on to it that is theirs. First of all, you have to understand it's not yours. That's how you're robbing him. But then you want to allocate where you want to give it. Seriously? Once you give it to the house of God, that's it. You've given it to God. Oh, I'm not going to give that minister my money, that church my money. It's not yours, first of all. As long as you're obedient to God, that's it. That person who is not doing right by God, God has something in store for them. They're not getting out, but it's not God's. Come on. And so what they do is what I'm finding that people do is they'll take God's 10% and then they'll give it to, I'm going to give it to this organization or that organization. No, God said give it to his storehouse, his house of God, his house. And if you want to give an offering to those organizations, then give those. Those are wonderful offerings. God wants us to take care of the homeless. Well, help the hungry, the ones that are suffering. Help positive causes. He wants us to do that. Those are offerings. God is pleased with that. But don't take his 10%, try to allocate it the way you want to. And period. There's a whole book on that. There's a whole book on what happens to those offerings and those tithes. But get this. He's not just that God that says, just do this. He is so wonderful. You don't even have to do this. He says, test me. Try me. Watch what he says he's going to do. He promises he will pour out blessings. You won't even have room enough to receive. You won't even have room enough to receive. What kind of blessings might those be, Lord? We just expect monetary blessings, right? Our God is bigger and better than that. He has so much to offer that those blessings that you get, money can't even pay for the stuff, a lot of the blessings he bless you with. But he says you won't have room enough to receive it. He said, test me and try me. Watch and see what I do. This is your opportunity right now to prove my word. This is your opportunity. And so some of the things he says is your crops will be in abundance. Now, we don't farm like that, but we receive our blessings in different ways, financially or whatever. But your crops will be in abundance. And he says that he would guard us from diseases as well. That's another blessing all by itself. Health is a blessing. Peace is a blessing. Our children, obedience is a blessing. Just saying, protection of them. That's a blessing. And you say this right here. We will call the arrogant blessed, because you're saying stuff like this. There's no use in serving God. The wicked are the ones who are rich. Those who try God, they go unpunished. Really? So God says, God had this scroll of remembrance, and it records the name of those who fear God. And those who always thought about honoring God's name, that they thought about it and they honored God's name. He said, they will be my people, my own special treasure. I will spare them as a father spares an obedient child. Then, he said, then again, you'll see the righteous and the wicked. Yeah, between those who serve God and those who do not. That's what he said. Okay, keep on looking at them thinking they're blessed. You're going to see who the blessed ones are. And then, guys, I'm going to read this final chapter in this final book of the Old Testament. The Lord Almighty says the day of judgment is coming. He says, burning like a furnace. The arrogant and the wicked will be burned up like straw on that day. They will be consumed like a tree, roots and all. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings, and you will go free, leaping with joy like calves, like let out of a pasture. On the day when I act, you will tread upon the wicked as they were dust under your feet, says the Lord Almighty. Remember to obey the instructions of my servant Moses, all the laws and regulations that I gave on Mount Sinai for all Israel. Look, I am sending you the prophet Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord arrives. His preaching will turn the hearts of parents to their children, the hearts of children to their parents. Otherwise, I will come and strike the land with a curse. Now, that was Malachi, last book in the Old Testament, the fourth verse of the fourth chapter of that book. That's what I just read. And so tomorrow we'll be going into the New Testament, which starts with Matthew. But guys, I really enjoy the Old Testament. People don't spend too much time in the Old Testament because of the New Testament. But what I absolutely love about the Old Testament is you see God's character. You see a lot of stuff, why he says what he says, why he do what he do. The New Testament is more like a don't do this, but the Old Testament shows you why and how he came up with those things. You see the character of God in the Old Testament, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So if you really want to get to know God, I strongly recommend the Old Testament. But guys, that's the Old Testament. Day number 274. We took us 274 days to read the entire Old Testament. And yeah, guys, we did it. That was Malachi chapter 1 through 4. You have a God-filled blessed day.